Have you ever thought how you could create a business that allows you to travel the world and have it paid for by your customers because they love what you do for them so much? Well, that's exactly what my guest on today's Global Travel Channel podcast show actually does. More next. Hello and welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show. My name is Mark Philpott. On the show, we talk to people from across the world about all things related to travel. From amazing adventures to inspiring stories to the not so well-known destinations, we cover it all. You can find all of our previous podcast episodes on our Global Travel Channel website by going to www.globaltravelchannel.com. If you don't go there, you can also download them from Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and a host of other platforms. The Global Travel Channel is a collaboration between travel writers, photographers, YouTubers, podcasters, and bloggers from across the world. We bring you information that we hope makes your next travel experience an awesome one, no matter where you decide to travel to. You can also find the Global Travel Channel on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So be sure to subscribe, like, and follow us so that you can keep updated on our new content postings as and when they happen. You can even now support us through Patreon. For as little as the price of a cup of coffee per month, you can help us continue to produce our podcast show. Anything that you can contribute will be greatly appreciated. My guest today is a keynote speaker, marketing guru, motorcycle rider, and all-round lover of travel. So why don't we get to meet Sonja Piontek? Welcome to the show, Sonja. So Sonja, welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be on this episode today.
And I'm excited to have you because you are actually guest number 41 on my show.
Woohoo! Well, I was just going to say, lucky I'm younger, but I'm actually not. just over.
Tell us, though, where are you talking to us from today?
So I'm currently sitting in my office on the 64th floor of a beautiful building overlooking Singapore. So I'm in the heart of Singapore, looking down onto the marina with Marina Bay Sands, the hotel with that infinity pool on top. And that's basically, I'm soaring above Singapore.
So you've made 99% of the people on the show jealous today because you're sitting in the...
Well, that wasn't my intention. But if I can make up for it, it's a cloudy, overcast day, and I'm not at the beach. There's no sunshine today, but it is still beautiful.
Very good. So is this your first appearance on a podcast show?
It actually is. I've never done any podcasting before. I do a lot of keynote speaking. I've done a lot of TV interviews and stuff. I've done a lot of print, but I've never done podcasts. So I'm very excited. Thank you, Mark.
Well, fantastic. Well, in relation to that, then I've been reading a little bit about what you do in the background and preparing for the show. And I want to use a word that I'm aiming to get for the show, and that's the word soar. I want this show to soar for you today.
Oh, I'm happy to do that. Soaring, unleashing potential, and just having amazing, unforgettable experiences is just what I'm passionate about.
That's great. Now, we're going to talk about a lot of things related to travel, and you and I have quite a lot in common when it comes to ex-corporate life. But before we get on that track, as I thought as a first appearance on a podcast show, I might just throw you a random question to make you feel relaxed and settled into the whole show. So how about we go ahead with that random question right now?
Oh, let it be random.
My random question for you today is, what is your favorite snack food to eat when you are traveling?
Oh dear, do I have to be honest?
Yes.
It's got to be chocolate.
Chocolate?
Well, it's chocolate and peanuts. It depends. It would be chocolate if only chocolate was easier to transport in hot climates. So it's either chocolate or peanuts, salted peanuts, heavily salted peanuts.
So what about peanut chocolate?
No, not a fan. Sorry.
Not a fan of that? Okay,
no.
It's either peanuts or it's chocolate.
Yes.
Before we head on into talking business and travel and all the rest of it, can you remember back to your first ever major travel experience? When was that and where did you go?
I would say the first one I actively remember was probably at age 5 or 6. We took a cruise cruise ship trip down to the Caribbean. And we basically spent 6 weeks on a cruise ship and then visited all the Caribbean islands together with my parents and my twin sister. And that was quite an experience for me as a little girl. Also being on that big boat, being out in the open ocean and just seeing nothing but water around you, and then meeting all these amazing, very different people in the Caribbean. I think it was one of those very early trips that really had an impact on me, like seeing the steel bands and dancing as we arrived at the harbors. It was quite impressive.
Did you get your sea legs very quickly on that trip?
Well, I have a bit of a problem with shaky waters and shaky planes, I have to admit. But yeah, there's pills that can help, and yeah, I've found a good way of doing boats easily and doing planes easily now.
I would classify you as somebody who is very much a citizen of the world, a global traveller, and somebody that's lived in a number of countries. But your origins go back to where particularly?
So I'm originally a Bavarian girl. So I'm German. Was born in Munich, a fantastic city, but already started in my childhood, lived to go overseas, lived a few years with my parents in Austria, in a tiny little village up in the mountains. It was really Heidi land. Then did parts of my studies in a rather authentic Indonesian town on central Java. Then went to New Zealand for 2 years, then lived in China for 3 years, and now been in Singapore for 5.
Wonderful. And I'm sure that all those different travel experiences have shaped you into the person you are today. But now, I said earlier that you and I share a few things in common, and the first one is that we both left the corporate world not so long ago to pursue our passions in life. So why don't you tell the listeners today what you were doing in the corporate world, and then what was the story behind why you left and what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I was a full-on corporate executive career girl, working for BMW. I started my BMW career actually not in the headquarters in Munich, but all the way down in New Zealand. It was a very, very interesting way to start working for a big international company, to actually be out in the market in a faraway country that where you actually knew your customers by name, you knew your dealers by name, and it wasn't a big operation, but it was really a way for me to get to know the business. I then worked on the motorbike side and the marketing area for many, many years. Then we went to China for several years, and before I went to Singapore, I was responsible for all the strategic naming and branding for BMW globally. So quite an interesting job, which brought me very close to many facets of the business and gave me amazing insights into the engineering side of the business, into the new products, into basically what was going to happen in the next few years and decades. And then at some stage, my big boss from Germany approached me and said, you know what, we're considering sending you to Singapore as the director of marketing for Asia. And the moment before she had finished that sentence, I knew this was my job. So I was obviously overly excited once they appointed me. I then came to Singapore as the director of marketing, being responsible for all the marketing in the region. It was a dream come true. It really was a dream come true. We did the most amazing events, campaigns. We really built the brand, launched the brand in a few new countries, like, for example, Myanmar. We were working very closely with very diverse partners, all the way from the Philippines, Singapore, very advanced countries, but also then very small countries like New Caledonia, for example, or emerging markets like Cambodia and Myanmar. Immensely interesting. Had a great team from, I would say, I think they were from 9 different nationalities, so full on diversity also in the team. But then after 3 years, it got to a point where I realized that I really wanted to do so much more in Asia. I wanted to really engage more with clients in Asia. I wanted to create more experiences for clients in Asia. And then when my time as an expat for BMW in Singapore had come to an end, and they asked me to go back to Germany to work on some comparatively rather dull project, I just had this feeling of, no, this just does not feel right. And also, like, I've always been very comfortable in a corporate position, having a regular paycheck, sort of being in the safety of this big family. But then all of a sudden being in Singapore, where all of a sudden most of my friends were entrepreneurs, there's a huge momentum going on. It's just all about opportunities and making things happen. I all of a sudden had the guts to say, you know what, if ever I set up on my own, if ever I found a company on my own, it's got to be in Singapore. I would not have done it in Germany, with 90% of my friends being in corporate jobs as well. But here in Singapore, all of a sudden I had the feeling, if there's one place in the world I find the guts to do it in, it's Singapore. So after a long period of thinking, of having doubts, of discussing, of rethinking, of being scared, I then eventually said, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I'm in sort of the prime years of my career. I'm just going to do it. So I pulled the corporate plug. And 2 weeks later, 2 weeks after leaving BMW and not having the director of marketing for a super well-known international company on my business card anymore, I was sitting here in Singapore, and I walked to the registration office and I founded my first company. And I can remember today, even, like, as I walked out with a piece of paper in my hand which said founder and CEO of Sonnenkind Private Limited, I just had tears rolling down my eyes. I had really made it. I had founded my first company.
Such an exciting thing.
Yeah, and the rest has just been the most rewarding, amazing journey.
Now, before we keep going on that transition, I want to go back to New Zealand, because as a very proud New Zealander sitting here today talking to you, I want to know, and I'm sure lots of other people that have been listening to your story thus far want to know, how come you ended up in New Zealand, of all places, for BMW?
So I was actually still doing my studies in Germany, and as part of the studies, we were encouraged to go overseas to do an internship for 3-4 months overseas. So I had done parts of my studies in Indonesia, so I was at a point where I said, okay, the next country I'm going to for that internship should rather be an English, like properly English-speaking country. Then I flipped the globe, and I was like, America, UK, not far enough. Australia, and then I just sort of looked a bit further down. I'm like, gosh, it's got to be New Zealand. So I was then set on it's got to be New Zealand. Not that I'd ever been there, but it just had this thing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to New Zealand. Then the next thought was, okay, where am I going to do my internship? And I thought, well, why not do it in an internationally recognized company? Because then it actually looks good on my CV and people can actually understand what I was doing and where I was working. So I thought, well, New Zealand is an amazing country. BMW is a great company. Why not apply there? Applied for an internship, got the internship position confirmed relatively quickly, flew all the way to New Zealand, started, and then 2 months into being there, I hadn't really received any feedback. I didn't know how I was doing. I mean, I was trying my best, but I just really didn't know what they thought of me. So 2 months into being there, the company secretary walks towards my desk and he's like, Sonja, into the boardroom now. I mean, you can imagine I was 21 years old. I was confident, but not at that very moment. So I followed James into the boardroom and I thought, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? He opens the door and I see the whole management team sitting there looking at me. I'm like, seriously, no. Just in my mind, it goes like, what have I done wrong? Like, what? And I'm just going through the last few days. I'm like, have I upset anyone? What's wrong? And then James leans back and he's like, have you got any idea why you're here? And I'm like, no. And then he says, Kirsten is leaving the company. And I'm like, just going in my mind, shit, not because of me. And then they all start smiling. And he's like, you know what, that puts us in a difficult situation because we don't have anyone to fill her job. And we really like what you've been doing. Do you want to stay longer and take over her job? And I just looked at him and I'm like, where can I sign?
Fantastic.
And he then said, Sonja, one thing you need to learn for your career. If anyone makes a job offer like this, you lean back and say, let me think about it. I said, James, no, where can I sign? Yes, I will do this. So we all laughed, and basically I was made the CRM and events manager that day, and I stayed for almost 2 years.
Were you based in Auckland during that time?
I was based in Auckland. My partner was based in Queens, well, actually in Arrowtown. So I had the best of both islands, I would say. And still up until today, I go back to New Zealand minimum once a year. I just love the place.
What do you like about it so much?
The people. The people, the spirit. I mean, the country is beautiful, but if it wasn't for the people to so thoroughly touch my heart, I don't think I would go back every single year. And it's something, I've brought a lot of guests and clients to New Zealand, and quite often in the beginning they say, yeah, it's beautiful, but gosh, it's so far away. And then if you look at other countries, they're also nice. I'm like, yeah, but the combination of this unspoiled, most stunningly beautiful country with those people that are just so genuine and caring and just wonderful, that's what you will not get anywhere else in the world. And every single client that I've brought to New Zealand absolutely fell in love with the place, and afterwards said, you know what, we now understand why you're so much in love with New Zealand.
Do you find that New Zealanders are the same whether they're in New Zealand or whether you've met them somewhere else in the world?
It depends. If they're just traveling, they are the same. If they've settled somewhere else, they're not really the same. I prefer the Kiwis that have actually stayed
in New Zealand.
But it's the same. Like, same with Germans. Germans overseas aren't typical Germans. But the Kiwis I prefer the Kiwis at home. Back
to your exciting moment in Singapore where you worked out of the registration office with your new business. What was it that you were going to do?
I just had this idea of creating unforgettable travel-related experiences. So I'd done a lot on that, in that regard with BMW already. I set up for BMW the biggest driving experience outside of Germany. We took hundreds of customers around the world on amazing drive-related experiences. And it was just something where I thought, well, I love to travel. I don't want to just sort of open a travel agency. I want to do something where I really create value for brands, where I offer unique experiences for clients, but I didn't really have a full-on plan as in what I was going to do. And I have to say, one of my biggest assets is that I'm very flexible and that I'm open to see opportunities and also to seize opportunities. So within the first few months of starting the business, I basically, first of all, I didn't spend a single cent on marketing other than printing business cards and hosting my website. But it developed so nicely. And the first brands came to approach me and just said, you know what, Sonja, we would really love to work with you. And I developed the first corporate programs for them. And it just developed really nicely from just a mere idea to a beautiful business that is now offering brand building for international customers like Land Rover, like Porsche, like Cycle and Carriage Group. I'm currently working on a huge project for one of the leading banks here in Singapore. And it's just beautiful to see how I can help them build their brand, sell their products, engage with their employees, motivate their employees through these travel experiences.
Now, what I'm finding really interesting listening to you about this is, and I'm sure there's going to be many people listening to the show today who are also gravitated towards this idea of embracing your passion in life and turning that into a business opportunity. So what were the things that were most challenging for you after you left that corporate identity and having that BMW logo behind you? What did you find the most challenging?
To be honest, I thought it was going to be not having that big fat brand logo on my business card anymore. That, to be honest, was not the case at all, because a lot of my previous business partners, previous connections, they all came back and they said, you know what, you've always been so trustworthy and you've always delivered when you were with BMW. We don't mind what's on your business card. Obviously, Sonnenkind is not a well-known company yet, but they were like, we want to just work with you because we know that you really care about our brands and we want you to help us deliver. The one thing that I did find a little bit challenging is not walking into an office with a whole lot of lovely colleagues anymore. I mean, not that every colleague was great or lovely or my best friend, but just having that network, being part of a bigger group of the BMW family, that I found a bit sad in the beginning, sort of like all of a sudden it was just me before I had my first employees. And for example, you draft a contract, you can't just quickly shoot it over to the legal department for checks. You've just got to do it yourself. You've got to find a lawyer, you've got to talk to them, you've got to pay them. And it's just logistically, it's so much easier working in a big company where you've got a whole lot of staff, where you've got all the different departments. But would I consider it a real challenge? No, it was just getting used to a different setup. But the freedom that I gained, the joy that I gained, the amount of politics that I lost, is just incredible. I would do it again every day.
Now, you talked about the excitement and energy around starting your business in Singapore, and having gone through that process myself, I can relate to it, but a lot of our listeners haven't done that. So I wanted to talk about that because you were really in the midst of entrepreneurship, startup fever, as I call it, that Singapore generates around this. Did you find that a really embracing energy to get involved in, and did you get a lot of help from that community in the beginning?
To be honest, not at all, and I stayed very clear of it because I met a few sort of people that were in this whole, let's all sit together and help each other, and let's all sort of hold hands and become entrepreneurs together. What I figured relatively quickly, that there's a lot of people who have this idea of, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to have a startup because it's the hip thing to do at the moment. But there's a lot of people that don't have a clear understanding of what are their skills, what are their strengths, and what is their passion.
Yep.
Like so many people I talked to in the beginning, I was just like, I'm sorry, but you're not going to succeed simply because you're neither passionate about it, nor is it something you're really good at, nor is it something that the market wants. And I just didn't have the feeling that I should team up with these people and sort of waste time just arguing and discussing ideas where mine was so clear. And I mean, there's a lot of very successful business people. So I rather talk to my successful business friends, my successful entrepreneur friends, and just sort of shared with them what I was doing. And a lot of them offered their support. And sometimes it's just little details. Like, for example, one of my entrepreneur friends said, keep your overheads as low as possible for as long as possible. So I've got this book where I wrote down these sentences. Most of the time, it's just little gold nuggets, like one sentence each. But that was something where I said, I'd rather get inspiration from people who've made it rather than from all the many that want to make it. And obviously, a lot of them are not going to make it. So for me, I think it's always good to learn from those who have succeeded and not necessarily team up with those who don't know what they're doing. So it might sound a bit arrogant, but I really like to learn from the best. The question is, are all my tours that I do, would I all call them a vacation? No, very clearly not. Whilst on Facebook and on LinkedIn, it all looks just very glamorous, and me riding horses in Namibia and with some clients visiting the nomads in Mongolia and sitting with some sadhus doing some prayers in Nepal. It obviously looks like a fantastic holiday, which it is for the guests. For us organizing them, obviously, it's a lot of hard work. But then again, without hard work, you're not going to make a living, or without dedicated work, you're not going to really make a living in any job. So I'd rather be talking to an 80-year-old nomadic lady in Mongolia than sitting in front of my laptop doing accounts.
Yep.
So is it a full-on holiday every time we go out? No, it's not. But is it much better than sitting in an office looking at PowerPoint presentations or doing Excel sheets? Yes, it is. And it is 1,000 times better. And I mean, every single trip I take, I just thank the Lord for being able to make a living out of these things. I mean, going to New Zealand with Leica camera, with guests from Vietnam who'd never been to New Zealand, flying helicopters over the Southern Alps, going crayfish fishing by helicopter, and then flying across the Southern Alps again, stopping on top of a mountain in a remote area and having a barbecue with freshly caught crayfish up above the skies. I mean, the clouds. I mean, unbeatable.
Yeah.
It's just such an amazing experience. Was I the one responsible for it? Yes. Did I have to organize it? Yes. Was I the one sort of looking after everyone being just in the greatest mood? Yes, I was. But was it still an amazing experience? Oh, yes, it was.
Terrific. Now, I want to get back to your business name because there's a beautiful story behind this, and I'd like you to share it with the audience today, because the name, being a German name, obviously a lot of people listening today won't understand the direct translation or the nearby translation. So can you share with us what the name of your actual business is and what it translates to in English?
Yeah, so Sonnenkind, that's how you pronounce it in German, actually means child of the sun. So when I left the corporate world and started my own business, it wasn't just about starting a new business, but it was also time to make up for something that had to be done. So when my parents split up I was 13 years old, for many years I wouldn't really talk to my dad because quite obviously my mom was totally right and my dad was totally wrong. It took me a few years to realize that maybe that was not quite the case. But still, for many years I hadn't spoken to my dad, and it must have been the most painful phase for him ever. How do you make up for something like that? You really can't. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but you just have to put in a lot of effort to really show that you're sorry and that you really do appreciate what he'd done for you. So when it came to naming my first company, and also with my naming background, I was obviously going like, okay, this company has got to have the best name in the world. So I started off coming up with all these amazing names. But then all of a sudden I was sitting down and I'm like, no, actually this is an opportunity to say thank you to my dad. Why don't I use the name he used to call me or used to give me when I was a little girl? That was Child of the Sun. So immediately I knew, forget all the fancy made-up super names. Let me just call my company Child of the Sun. And by doing so, say thank you and say apologies to my dad. And I registered the company. I sent him, or I handed over a copy of the registration document framed to him. And it was the first time in my life that I actually saw my dad cry. So it did work. It did work.
What a beautiful story. And I'm glad that you shared that with us all today. So thank you very much for doing that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Now, getting back to these bucket list experiences, and that's what I deem them to be, that you offer your customers.
Oh, yes.
How do you come up with the ideas? Where do you get the ideas from?
I don't know. They are just in me somehow. Like for me, what's always important, and for me, true luxury is not just booking the nicest hotel or having the most expensive meal. For me, it's all about experiences. Like, for example, when I take these very rich customers to New Zealand, yes, we will let them stay in 5-star resorts, in fantastic super lodges where you just fly in by helicopter into the middle of nowhere, and then you find this amazing super lodge which only has like 3-4 suite rooms. But then also as part of the trip, I would never just do it sort of the super luxe way. I will then, for example, bring them to a tiny little place called St. Bathans. I don't know if you've been there in New Zealand, which is a gold mining settlement from the 1860s. So if you go to St. Bathans, it's not about a 5-star resort. It's about staying in an original prison cell. It's about staying in the authentic old hospital. It's about having a beer with the 80-year-old owner of the pub, of the local pub, the Vulcan Hotel. It's about having a pub roast and not a lobster with caviar and champagne. It's just about this full-on authentic experience. And funny enough, most of the time, the clients in the end always say that the experiences, the experiential parts, were by far the best. Those are the things that in the beginning they sometimes are a bit hesitant about. Ooh, do we really want to stay in a prison cell? Do we really want to stay in a gur camp, in a tent camp in Mongolia with the nomads? And I see my task really to make them feel comfortable about it, to take them by the hand, to guide them through these experiences, because then in the end they appreciate it like nothing else before, because that's something that they have never done before. to sit and meet like this 80-year-old nomad grandmother, to meet her grandchildren that are just the most peaceful, happy kids you could ever imagine, to see how they deal with their animals, to see how friendly and open they are, to try their homemade yogurt, even if it might taste slightly different to the yogurt that you're used to have a glass of vodka with the gentleman. I mean, these are experiences that money can't buy.
Now is a really good time for me to interject with my abbreviation that I put on my Facebook page earlier
Yes,
today
please.
that seemed to bamboozle you somewhat. You wrote about the return on investment, or ROI as we all know it in the corporate world, and I dutifully replied with NFTS. And Sonja just asked me before the show started, are you setting me up here? What's this all about? I don't know what this is. But you've just explained it in the last couple of minutes, because NFTS stands for Nutrition for the Soul.
Ah, yes. Oh, beautiful.
And that's exactly what you give your customers in terms of the experience you've just described.
Absolutely. Let me quickly add one more aspect about Mongolia. So the next trip that I'm going to be on next week, actually, we're leaving with 50 VIP customers of one of Asia's leading automotive dealer groups. And we are going to take them not just to Ulaanbaatar, but obviously really deep into the countryside. And we're not just going to visit the nomad family, but what we will do, we will beforehand teach our guests how to build and how to set up one of those gur camps. So we purchased a gur tent. And we are going to teach them, together with some Mongolians, how these wooden structures are built, how to then put the felt cover over it so that you can actually build your home. Now, Mongolians take about half an hour to do so, maybe an hour. I have a feeling that with 50 Singaporeans, it won't be quicker, because we're all total laymen at building gurs. But it'll be great fun. But we don't stop there. So for me, it's all about like having proper full-on experiences. So we're not just building the gur. We are then going to take it apart again. And when we visit that nomad family in the middle of nowhere that have very generously offered to open their doors to us and let us basically visit their home, their bedroom, their living room, their kitchen, their everything. We said we will actually give that gur that we were training on, we will give that to them as a present, as a token of appreciation. And I can guarantee you today that I will cry when we hand that over to that family. They have got one gur that they've had for 65 years. For them to be given a second home, a second house, so to speak, is going to be a most overwhelming moment. They have no clue that we're going to do it. I don't think they expect anything other than a few smiles and a few photos to be taken. But by us offering that second home to them, that's something where we can really make a difference, and that's an experience that our guests will treasure forever. And that's something they will also always bring in touch with the company they're going with. Not just did we put a branding on the gur, which obviously means a lot to us and the client, not so much to the Mongolians, but it is a memorable moment of, hey, Cycle and Carrots, the client, actually does care. And it's not just about going there and taking photos. It's really about giving back. And that's a brand moment where customers, they will share the story with all their friends and families, and they will always share it with that brand in mind. And that's how you really do proper brand building. That's much better than just having some logos up somewhere and some advertising.
That's wonderful. Now, how long does it take you to organize these experiences? So, for instance, this one in Mongolia, how long have you been putting that together for?
Several months, I would say. I mean, it really depends on the extent. I mean, obviously, if you want to take 50 people to a country as remote and as underdeveloped in many regards as Mongolia and make things happen in the middle of the countryside, it obviously takes a lot of time to put that together. Generally, these ideas are born within a very short time. Like, for example, the idea to take all these clients to Mongolia. So how it happened, a partner agency asked me to come in for a brainstorming, just because they know that I love brainstorming and coming up with creative concepts. So I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to help you. They said, we've got this pitch coming up. Can you support? I'm like, yeah. So let's sit down and just have a talk about it. So my first question was, so who's the client? They said it's Cycle and Carriage, one of Southeast Asia's leading automotive dealer groups. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know them. What's their brand slogan? And they said, well, it's a new one, and it is Exceptional Journeys. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'm like, and what's the occasion? What are we pitching for? And they said, well, they've got their 120th anniversary. And I just looked at them like, well, that's so obvious. 120th anniversary. Exceptional Journeys. We're going to take 120 of their customers on an exceptional journey. And everyone in the room just looked at me and was like, what do you mean? I'm like, what I just said. We take 120 of their customers on an exceptional journey. Let's make it 3 different countries. So we actually walked in, did the pitch. 7 agencies were pitching. 6 came up with some advertising campaign. Happy birthday, billboards, 1-page ads, 2-page ads, social media clips. And we just walked in and we said, we want to take your brand slogan. We want to actually bring that to life and take 120 of your customers on 120 anniversary exceptional journeys. The MD just looked at us and said, done deal, we'll do it. So now we're going to Mongolia, to Nepal, as well as to Korea. And that's something that's absolutely valuable for the brand, because it's not just hey, we've got our birthday. This is something really meaningful, and the whole campaign actually created a lot of buzz because people were just getting excited, and people still today say, I still can't believe that this is for real, that we're actually going, that we've been chosen, that we won this trip, that we are allowed to go with this company. And I can guarantee you these are lifetime clients, and they will bring their friends to the brand. So the return for the brand is manifold to what they would have done with a happy birthday advertising campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how do you manage the logistics at the other end? So have you got somebody on the ground in Mongolia and these other places? Or?
Yeah, so we've got good partners on site. Obviously, they are not on... In these countries, it's difficult to find people that are operating on the same corporate level of excellence that we're used to. But they are the most caring, warm-hearted people, and they really want to make it happen. It's just sometimes it's difficult for them to understand what we need to do. So my team actually puts in a lot of effort for them to understand where we need to sort of just make it a very, very exclusive experience, how to do it, how to make every single moment count. And it's even things like, for example, we do one lunch stop in an area where seriously there are just no good restaurants. Well, not that there's any good restaurants in Mongolia, really. But we decided, okay, you know what, let's do a barbecue, let's do a picnic lunch. But rather than just doing a picnic lunch, I'm like, we need to add something special here. So we're getting some nomads on horses to come with a herd of about 70 wild horses, and they will be racing past us and showing us how they do their herding while we are having the picnic lunch.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
And that's something where we obviously need a local partner, because I would not be able to find a nomad and tell them exactly where we need them to be with their 70 wild horses. That's where you really need good local partners.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's a life-changing experience. That's going to be something that these people have with them for the rest of their lives. It's extraordinary.
Yes. And we did the pre-trip briefing last week, and they were so excited already, and they just say they can't believe that they have the opportunity to actually go to such a unique country, to have such an amazing experience. And when we shared a few of the details and the activities that we're going to do, their eyes were just wide open, and I can just guarantee you they will love it. And it's so beneficial for the brand, because for me it's not just making the customers happy. What's crucial for me is having return on investment for these brands. When we do photography tours for Leica camera, my main target is, first of all, obviously to have a great tour for the guests, but then to make sure that as a result they purchase new Leica cameras. Sometimes they buy them before the trip to be well equipped for the trip, sometimes they buy them after, but the whole idea is for Leica to then make camera sales based on the fact that customers were on this amazing trip and just had this photo safari of a lifetime.
Incredible experience, yeah. You're obviously a business dynamo, so I'm going to ask you where you expect to have your business in 5 years from now? Where do you want it to be in 5 years from now?
You know what? I do not have a 5-year plan. For me, no, I don't. I'm German. I'm very well.
I'm surprised. I'm very surprised.
Yeah, I do not have a 5-year plan. For me, my life plan has always been be open, be flexible, and see opportunities and seize them. I want to continue to create amazing experiences. I want to definitely grow the incentive side of the business, like offering incentive trips for leading banks and insurances. Do I necessarily want to grow this business to 500 employees and multi-million-dollar turnaround? I don't know. To be honest, if I just want to be happy, and I want to make other people happy, and I want to help others have experiences they would not dare to have without me.
Size doesn't always matter.
No, it doesn't. And I take so much pride actually still physically being able to go on these tours. And most of my clients insist on me personally being there, because that is for me part of the quality promise. I will be there and I will make sure that we deliver. I mean, I've got a great team, but in terms of guest facing, some of my team are the most amazing people when it comes to execution. Are they the entertainers that will then take customers by the hand and make them comfortable to just walk into that GUR and talk to the elderly lady? No, they are not, because everyone has different strengths. And me, with my also speaking career, I'm very comfortable around people. I'm very comfortable to host, and I just love taking people by the hand, literally as well as physically, and just allowing them to have amazing experiences. And my team are the ones that in the background just make it all happen and make sure we have the right infrastructure. Does it have to be a multi-million-dollar huge enterprise? I don't know. It can, but it doesn't have to.
Now, what about the plans when it comes to living in Singapore? How long have you been there now?
I've been here for 5 years. I absolutely love it. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to set up a business. It's a great place to do business. Is it the only fantastic country in the world? No, it clearly isn't. There's a few things that I miss. I terribly miss mountains. I'm a mountain girl. I love the ocean, but I really miss my mountains. Am I going to move back to Germany in the next few years? I don't know. I mean, I sort of see myself as keeping the business here for the time being. This is where most of my clients are at, whilst traveling the world. And I mean, my parents are getting older. I'm traveling to Germany on a very regular basis. My partner is in Germany, but we do a lot of the tours together as well. He's a medical doctor, so he comes along to many of my tours simply because
that's very convenient.
No, if you go to these countries, I would not ever even think of taking customers to any of these places without having a medical doctor there. It's just something where the risk is too high. So that's a real beauty. Do we need to necessarily live in Bavaria to have that life together? No, we don't.
No.
So again, total flexibility, and that's the beauty of today's world. And the beauty of my business. My business is my laptop. Well, no. My business is my passion, my brain, my laptop, and my phone.
In that particular order.
Yes.
Can you see yourself back in New Zealand one day?
I thought about it several times. And to be honest, whenever I'd step out of a plane in New Zealand, my first thought is like, gosh, why am I not doing this permanently? But to be honest, in order to run a successful business or also run my speaking career, New Zealand might not necessarily be the best base. As long as I can afford to be in New Zealand 1, 2, 3 times a year, I'm totally happy. And I've still got so many friends there. New Zealand will always be a second home for me.
What's your favourite type of New Zealand ice cream?
Not hokey pokey, not any of the, no, none of the typical New Zealand ice creams. I'm actually, and you might be totally offended by this, I'm not a big fan of New Zealand ice creams.
You're not?
I'm more into... No, sorry. I'm more into the Italian gelatos.
Oh, there you go.
I'm a New Zealand ice cream fan. Sorry.
Okay, I
love New Zealand, but not for its ice creams.
Now, I'm not gonna let you go today before we have a chat about motorcycle riding, because I've seen photographs of you on motorcycles, and I'd like to know the story behind where all that started.
So it actually started when I was 18 and we were backpacking through India. Now, obviously, that was not something our parents were super excited about. It took us weeks, if not months, to convince my mom that it was okay for us, for the two of us, my twin sister and me, to go backpacking through India at the age of 18. That's before cell phones, before internet. Yeah, but so we were in India. And at some stage, we went to this place, and they had on the east coast near Pondicherry, and they had these scooters for rent. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just get some scooters. My sister just rolled her eyes. She's not a motorized person really. So we just got the scooters anyway. Next thing, I was on the beach racing up and down on my little scooter. Totally inappropriate. Yeah. Totally the wrong machine to do so. Yeah. But that moment, I knew, okay, motorbikes, that's me. Went back to Germany after that holiday, went for my license, and then I realized, bought my motorbike, almost made my mom suffer from a heart attack.
What was your first motorbike?
It was a Yamaha XT600.
Oh, okay.
A red one. Loved it. So I jumped on my motorbike, and then I realized, shit, I don't actually have any motorbike friends. Well, I had one, but he was sort of into the big sports bikes, going to Switzerland for the weekend, which for a beginner is like totally unrealistic. Yeah. So I'm like, that's me on a motorbike, all excited, but I don't really have friends. Then I went to New Zealand for my little 2, 3, 4 month stint, which ended up being a 2-year life-changing experience. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I met John, my first John. Yeah. And he's like, so what are you doing on the weekend? I'm like, well, nothing. I've only just arrived. I don't have friends. I don't know what to do. Nothing. And he's like, yes, you're coming with us on an adventure ride. I'm like, what? I had no clue. I'm like, what? He's like, you can ride bikes. And I'm like, yeah, trying to sound as confident as possible. Yeah. I had a license, but I couldn't ride bikes, seriously. Yeah. So he's like, we've got a little bike for you. You come along. So all of a sudden, I'm in the middle of the countryside. It was the Awakino River ride.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And that's where I met a second John. So that other John, he's like, oh, yeah, come and ride with us. Little did I know that he was 6 times New Zealand Enduro champion. So here I am, the first time ever off-road on a little borrowed bike from friends. And so joining 6 times Super Enduro Mega Champ John, and I'm like, oh, this is fun. Yeah. And I just fell in love with the sport. All of a sudden I realized this is actually a good thing to do. And I started having motorbike friends, totally got into motorbike riding. And now I do anything from road riding, still a lot of off-road riding, some track racing. I mean, never the racing, more fun racing. And I just love it. I'm passionate about it.
Have you got a bike in Singapore?
Yes, I've got a bike in Singapore, a BMW R90 Scrambler. I've got a Yamaha in Germany, and I've got access to quite a number of amazing bikes in New Zealand and around the world. So it's a beautiful way to explore the world.
Oh, it certainly is, and there's so many wonderful rides across the world. In fact, I've got a lady coming up on the show next week she's from the Ukraine, and she's been on a motorcycle by herself going around the world for the last 6 years, and she's coming on the show next week. She's currently in South America somewhere, and we're going to be having a chat. And I actually met her while I was in Singapore on my motorbike in Singapore, so that's quite an extraordinary story.
So what do you ride?
I used to ride a Triumph Tiger 1050cc when I was in Singapore. And
not a bad bike.
It was a beautiful bike, and I brought the same bike when I got back here to Australia, and have just recently sold it.
So why would a Kiwi live in Australia?
It's only a temporary thing. That's all.
You're excused.
That's all I will answer with that one.
No, it's only a temporary thing. It's a beautiful
country. Before I let you go today, I do want you to answer one main question I have, and that is, a lot of people that are listening to my podcast show are from that part of the demographic who loves to listen to other people's travel stories, and they get inspired by that. But maybe they've got a little bit of fear or concern around actually taking that big step for themselves to get out of their comfort zone and go and see another part of the world outside of the normal. I'm not talking about, going to Bali or going to the mainstream places, but actually going to places like you've been mentioning today, to Mongolia, and having these really rich, deep cultural experiences. What would you say to these people to, I guess, motivate them a little bit more to get off the couch, to turn the TV off, and to get out there and see other parts of the world?
I think the main thing I would tell them is that they need to see that behind the comfort zone lies a universe of opportunities. And unless you take that very first step, you get up, you switch off that TV, and you make that step into the big, wide unknown, into the world, you're not ever going to experience it. Yes, the first step might be hard, it might be challenging, it might be scary, but it will be so rewarding. So just have the guts, do it, go out to these countries. And I mean, you don't have to start. If you've only ever done Bali or something sort of safe, you don't need to go Afghanistan on your own. I mean, there's obviously things in between where you can still explore something quite remote, something rather untouched, without adding a big risk factor.
That's very good advice, but I do recommend Afghanistan as well. It's a beautiful country.
It is beautiful, but I wouldn't do it as a first time. Let's explore the real world. I would not recommend it.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. So there you go. You've heard it from a seasoned professional traveller who's not only travelling the world as part of her business, but has been travelling the world for most of her life. Listen, Sonja, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the podcast show today. Have you enjoyed your first podcast experience?
It's been really good. It's been really good, Mark. Really enjoyed it. So thank you very much for the experience.
Good. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule, particularly when you've got such a huge trip coming up with lots of exciting customers who are all going to have life-changing experiences. And we wish you all the very best for your business, because we know it's going to be extremely successful. And yeah, we'd love to have you back on the show one time in the future. You can talk to us about another one of your trips.
I would love to do that, and all the best for you as well, Mark.
Thank you very much, Sonja, and we'll say goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
There we go, everyone. What an amazing woman, and a fantastic business idea to travel around the world and take people on bucket list experiences to not only change their lives, but also to change their business and return on investment. I hope you all enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Don't forget, if you want to check out further episodes of the Global Travel Channel podcast show, you can find them on our website at www.globaltravelchannel.com, or you can download them from Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and a host of other places that you'll find on our website. And don't forget, we also have a Patreon page where you can help to contribute to the ongoing sustainability and success of this podcast show. Anything that you can contribute is greatly appreciated. Okay, that's it for now. My name is Mark Philpott, and until we meet next time, it's bon voyage from me.